All right, Dave, we're finally going to do it.
Do what, Ted?
We're going to talk about other RPGs, and this time, The Expanse.
Welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Dave, and as usual, hang out with this nerd.
Nerdarchist Ted.
Don't let those RPG videos fly by you. Instead, target lock that subscribe button and keep them flying through your YouTube feed.
And if you want Nerdarchy's take on them, make sure you blast that notification bell.
Hey, if you want to hear us talk about other role-playing games, over on Nerdarchy Live, our other YouTube channel, which there will be a link in the description, we have guests on all the time. We have gameplays, people from the industry, people playing other games, all kinds of things going over there. All of our live stuff is there, and oftentimes we will deviate from our usual D&D content. So with that, what is The Expanse? The Expanse ranges across a lot of media.
All right, so it started off as a book series. There's 8 already out, a 9th that's on the way. But beyond novels, there's a whole bunch of novellas. There are 4 seasons currently over on Amazon Prime as a television show. There's a board game as well as, an amazing RPG. So however you want to consume The Expanse, it's already out there.
And don't forget the comic books. We will also put a link in the description to some of those things as well as the RPG over on Amazon, so you can grab it if you want it. But even more than that, The Expanse is a science fiction world. It's very rich, very detailed. As you can see, there's tons of stuff that's out for it. And we're going to kind of discuss our experience with playing this science fiction role-playing game.
I will throw out a disclaimer. We've had our session 0 and our first session. So this is more of a first impressions, kind of thought pattern. But before we dive into the actual rules, I guess we should talk a little bit about, what this lore is. What is it about The Expanse that is so interesting to cross so many different avenues of media?
All right, us humans have left Earth. We've colonized Mars, and we've colonized which is called the Belt. The Belt is like the outer planets, their space stations, asteroids. Basically, think of Belters as space hillbillies. They're the grunts, they're the miners, they're harvesting, these valuable minerals for the innards, which would be Mars, the Martians, and the Earthers. Earth, Earth is now ruled by one unified body, one government. The Martians have split off from Earth. The Belters have kind of too, but they have a bit more of a hard time of it, and they're kind of linked both to the Martians and the Earthers, and kind of have to rely on them for things. It creates a lot of tension. If you're going to be playing in these worlds, you're going to be either playing a Martian, a Belter, or a Earther. It is kind of it's a little bit on the hard science fiction side of things. We have FTLs, but we don't have lasers per se. You're not firing blasters like Star Wars and some other games. And there's mechs. There's all kinds of crazy things that they introduce. They introduced the concept of aliens without actually introducing aliens per se and other life. So there's a lot of different types of games you could play with The Expanse, right? You could never leave a space station and kind of play like an urban game. You could be Martian military, or you could be living on Earth and you've left Earth or whatever, or you can be in a starship flying around. So I feel like, there's a lot of fun things you can do with this system.
As long as you're willing to embrace that sci-fi concept, there's a lot of genres that you've got the ability to explore, and this is kind of touching into our first session, but, there was exposure to, this one group that is, looking to create a life ship. So, you could literally just run that kind of game of, all right, your characters are on this ship. You have to go through, training, repair, survival, all while everything you need has to be created here. And if something goes wrong, you could be dooming everyone that's there. So, just, that concept could be something really cool and totally fits within the idea.
Not just one group, Ted. Mormons. The Mormons are building a generational ship that they want to use to travel beyond this solar system into the others to see what it's out there. And the idea is they will basically bring a colony with them, and it's going to take generations for this to happen. So yes, that is another cool story you could tell. There's so much you can do with it. There's so much detail and rich lore. Or you can change it up completely and run your own stories and totally shift it up. Maybe there are aliens, maybe there are even more exotic things out there. Who knows? You can do whatever you want. So let's get into it. The base mechanic.
So this is based on the age system put out by Green Ronin, and as Dave was about to say, and I cut him off, I apologize. Is just 3d6. You have 2 regular dice and your drama die, which does have to be easily identified as different when you go to roll the dice, and then you are going to add your appropriate modifier or subtract, as the case might be for particular scenarios, and then that needs to either meet or beat, in order to be successful, a target number. Simple as can be.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. The target number is going to have they're going to have a range from, what is it, like 7 to which is kind of like average, to 21.
So it's 7 for routine, all the way up to 21, which is nigh impossible. So when you're looking at these things, like, all right, if you're talking about something that you're moderately decent at, you're going to be adding a +1 or a +2, to the die roll, and the average die, is a 3.5 if you're looking at a d6. So that is easily a 10 or 11 that you would be able to get, unless your dice are rolling poorly. So that's why it is routine. You're typically going to be able to pass, the 7. And in our games, we saw numbers that, kind of fell at or below that 7, because, sometimes you're not rolling a prime stat and you happen to roll poorly, because the minimum dice is 3. But we also saw a 22 in that first session as well. So we ran the gamut.
So let's talk about that drama die and why it's important, why we have that extra D6 that looks different than the other 2.
All right, so the drama die is there to, as the name implies, adds extra drama. If amongst the 3 dice that you roll, you happen to roll a pair, and after doing all of your math, you are successful on the task, you get to do a stunt. You get to do something extra cool. So you look to whatever that number is on the drama die, and you get that many points. And then you look at what type of check you're doing, and then you would turn to the appropriate section in the book and say, oh, well, I've got 3 points, and I can, I can use a point to do an extra attack, or, I can choose to get extra information because I was making a knowledge roll. All of these kind of things are ways to enhance the game when you happen to roll doubles and are successful on your check.
So the mechanics are fairly simple like that. They're also very light as far as when you're looking at equipment, where, hey, literally my character has a pistol and a rifle. It doesn't matter which type they are. I have a heavy weapon, which is just a telescoping staff. The specifics don't matter. It's just like, your weapon belongs to this characteristics and traits. This is what they do. Describe it however you want.
My character, who, I'm basically playing a professor. I'm, a smart guy. I don't really have much in the way of, knowledge with weapons. Although when we were given our standard gear, because we started off, yay, we're all arrested, I was given a pistol and a dagger, and I'm like, what am I going to do with these things? So it's kind of amusing to see how things all unfold. We do have 9 stats within the game: accuracy, communication, constitution, dexterity, fighting, intelligence, perception, strength, and willpower. And there are a multitude of ways to figure out what your stats are. We opted to go with the basic point buy, which you get a total of points to then spend, and your stats are anywhere from a 0 to a 3, during that first step in process. But there is also an option that a couple of the characters in the game went, where you could take a -2 to a stat, probably one that you already put a 0 in, to increase another stat by +1, allowing you to start off with a 4 And then in the second step of character creation, you are actually going to increase a stat by an additional +1. So you could technically have things up to, a 4 or even a 5 under exceptional circumstances. So far we've had a lot of fun with it. My very first roll in the game wound up rolling doubles, and I rolled an odd, like 60 to 80% of my rolls in that first session were coming up double. So it was pretty crazy. I've got those dice marked of like, all right, these are the ones I use to play Expanse.
So in those traits that you have, your stats essentially, you then get focuses. So that's another way you advance your character, further define your character, making them better at certain tasks. Even if it's a trait that you're particularly not good at, you might actually still have a focus there, making you better at it than you otherwise would be. If you go up on the character street beyond our traits, we have another basic block that tells us about our characters, our origin, and that's just like, in our case, we're playing Belters. We could have been Martians or Earthers. You're going to have a background, which you have a bunch of different choices that you could choose, mines and military. You're going to have a social class that you can take, and this is kind of like, what rung of society did you come from? Did you come from money? Are you poor? You're also going to have your profession, which I'm a soldier, and then there's your drive, and it's like, that's kind of like a core ethos of your character. And then we get into talents, which, we're not going to go that deep into this video. That's just like an overview of all the mechanical parts that are going to build up your characters and make them different. With the first session, with our session 0, we had a lot of fun. Like Ted said, we started in prison because of the things that we came up with in our session 0. Our GM was like, normally I'll be like, I will pitch the group and be like, hey, you're going to start in prison. And in this case, you guys kind of put yourself there. It's funny when we were talking about like the different equipment and weapons, where Ted is like, I got a knife and a pistol. What am I going to do with these? And one of our other players is, I got a big wrench, right? that they use to club people with.
Yeah, I love the freedom of the system. Under your weapons, it's got light and heavy. You've got a pistol or a heavy, a blaster, a rifle, if you will, and then it's just up to you to describe exactly what that is. Which to me, I love systems like that are like, look, I don't need to go into, it's an axe, it's a sword, it's a club. I mean, for your typical D&D stuff, that's great. I love that there, and you can find an attribute that makes sense there. But when we're talking about advanced technology and you've got the capabilities to have any kind of weird thing and you want it to function as a weapon, great, go for it, have fun with it, describe it to your heart's content or not. So I love it. I'm having a lot of fun with this.
Well, it gives you narrative freedom as the player. You're going to pick the class and traits of the weapon, and from there, then you're just going to describe it. Is it a wrench? Is it a telescoping staff? Is it a battle axe? Whatever. Like, all those things still come up, but they're just descriptions at this point. And, it's fun. Narratively, it lets you use some cool things that normally maybe you wouldn't be able to use because you're playing a system that's crunchier and it really spells out everything. So you could use a shield as your heavy weapon, right? And maybe it doesn't give you any protection or anything, but it's a shield and you hit people with it, a la Captain America. So it does offer up some freedoms. And then when you're looking at other traits and stuff in the game, you might be able to then apply that to your shield as well, because the game is not like super granular.
And the other thing that I like about this particular game, is the fact that you can approach a problem from a multitude of directions. Or at least that's what I've seen, in our first session is like, you could use this, this stat, this skill, to solve this problem. Or what if you went in this direction? And it's been like, really, really awesome. Whereas typically D&D, while there are ways to solve problems, a multitude of ways, when you get down to a skill level, usually only one or two work. Whereas here, I found that's, quite different, because you're operating on a different level of technology, a different avenue of, this might actually work. So I love systems that do allow for that kind of freedom of, how do you want to attempt to solve this? So, and we have definitely seen that in just, even session 1.
Yeah, I mean, the system is very flexible, but I think just having a really flexible GM lends to that as well. So it might speak to that a little bit more. So let's talk about a little bit, like, one of the things that I really loved about this game, and I also find it problematic at the same time, is the stunt system. The stunt system is amazing. Now, the parts that are problematic for it is you have stunt tables for like literally everything you could possibly do. There's a bunch of them, and they have multiple options depending on how many stunt points you have. And this is going to really slow down the game, and it breaks immersion. If you're looking through the stunts to figure out what are the best ones for you to use in this particular circumstance or situation, that's going to slow down the game. It's going to break immersion, like I said, where one of the solutions is, yes, you could have a list of stunts that are your go-to stunts, but if you're doing something that your character wouldn't normally do and you have stunts, then that's going to be like, oh, I have to refer to the book. Or sometimes you might just not use the optimal stunt because it's not one of your go-to stunts.
This, it offers an amazing caveat of, as Dave says, really interesting, cool things that can happen in the game if you happen to roll those doubles and succeed, but also does have that problematic factor of, well, I was forced to make this check. I succeeded. I rolled doubles, but I am not familiar with these things, so I don't have a thing. So, again, this is our first session, so I don't know if there are just generics of, hey, select a boon for later and move on could be an option. That might be something that we discuss with the GM. But, it's a scenario that, yes, if you're not familiar with all of the options within a given selection, you might have to stop the flow of action to read and figure out what you want to do in that scenario. I know for my character, that one session, almost every single check I was making throughout the game was all based on my character's intelligence. So I had, 1 through 6, things that I could read. I kept the book open to that just in case it came up, and, boom, all right, I got this covered. I'm going to go with this one, or I'm going to go with that one. So a little bit of pre-reading on things that you might be doing is going to be useful and helpful, to the flow of the game.
Maybe a stack of index cards for each type of stunt that could come up, and you keep a couple of things on there. I mean, literally, that's my only complaint about the game. Other than that, it was a ton of fun. We enjoyed it. And I'm enjoying the world of the Expanse, both in the RPG and through other media as well. Let us know if you're into it, if you're checking it out. While you're at it, if you want to hear us talk about more role-playing games, then check out the Cipher System review from Monty Cook Games.
We've been known to talk about other RPGs during our patron live chat.
But that's not all. We have a monthly giveaway our patrons are automatically entered in. We create 5e content for players and DMs alike and more.
So until next time, stay nerdy.